Sometimes people ask me, Doug, what are some of the more memorable interviews you've done in your HM Magazine or Heaven's Metal over the years? And sometimes people expect to hear me talk about, Henry Rollins or Typo Negative or Extreme or Sammy Hagar or Alice Cooper or something. But some of the Christian heavy metal or Christian hard rock artists I've interviewed, some of those were some of the best as well. And so today on the Heaven's Metal Podcast, I'm going to tell you the Darrell Mansfield story. Darrell Mansfield, or the Darrell Mansfield Band, is one of Christian rock's best kept secrets. It's kind of the West Coast best kept secret because the Darrell Mansfield Band, this is a live album you should have, they pretty much were so good that they were kept busy playing up and down the West Coast. They would do high school assemblies and play churches and stuff, and they released a bunch of albums. This is one of his first and only real heavy metal album. Had Jesus Will Reign on it. This is a live album, Live and Flavo. Anyway, Darrell Mansfield Band signed to Polydor when this album came out. Anyway, the dude played harmonica like you wouldn't believe. The band Loverboy was smart enough to tap him to play on one of their albums at one time. But anyway, I was interviewing Darrell Mansfield, and I asked him a simple question. I said, how did you learn to play the harmonica, or how did you develop your style of playing harmonica? And he said, well, I used to be a guitar player when I was younger, and I was kind of wild, but I didn't do drugs. It was like, don't panic, it's organic, Darrell Mansfield. And I was kind of crazy, like to have fun. One time I got a policeman's uniform and I went to school early and I started directing traffic into the high school parking lot. And he had a really bad week. I think a girlfriend broke up with him and a relative he had died in Vietnam on the same week. And he wanted to go to be with Jesus. And the only way he knew how to be with Jesus was to die. So he went to a church and he brought a big, large butcher knife. I think he said it was like 9 to 12 inches long. And he cut his wrist on the altar in the church. This was at nighttime, nobody was there. And he cut his wrist so hard and so deep that he had to put the butcher knife in between his knees to cut his left wrist. And then he laid down on the altar to die and go to meet Jesus. Fortunately, a janitor was at the church and he peeked into the sanctuary and saw this young man bleeding to death there. So he called the ambulance. The ambulance came and a policeman was there too. And the policeman was like, "What do you want, son?" And he didn't do drugs, so he answered the policeman, "Life." And again, he wanted to be with Jesus. And the only way he knew how to be with Jesus was to die. And fortunately, there was a nurse at the hospital who told him how he could meet and be with Jesus without dying. And she led him to Christ. And that's the story that Darrell Mansfield told me. And he basically said, I could no longer play guitar anymore because the dexterity in my hands was impacted by his suicide attempt and the tendons or the muscles that were cut and injured. And so I picked up the harmonica and I tend to play it like I would play lead guitar. So that's why he plays the way he does, is he thinks of the harmonica like a lead guitar. So that, my friends, is one of my favorite stories in my history as a journalist. And that was a big surprise to hear that story. It was a memorable story. He told it, and I will long remember that story. And it was kind of a surprise. I was asking him about his harmonica playing, and he told me that story about how he came to know Jesus without having to die. So, join the discussion. Till next time.